Chapter 7: Shadows of the Past. As the morning sun continued its climb into the sky, casting long, early shadows across the grounds of Hogwarts, Harry lay restless in his bed in the Gryffindor dormitory. The events of his dream, so vivid and alarming, replayed through his mind like a sinister premonition. The image of Gandalf, not as the wise and benevolent figure he had known, but as a dark, menacing force, unsettled him deeply. "What do you mean the trees were walking?" asked Hermione sharply, snapping him out of his thoughts. "I mean, whatever world Professor Gandalf has come from, it's nothing like ours. There were elves, and I don't mean like Dobby, I mean real elves with swords and bows and their own kingdoms. There were dwarves living in cities beneath mountains, with mountains of gold and armies of goblins. Hermione, this world is shit. Gandalf's looked so much better," responded Harry, feeling disappointed in the unimaginative wizarding world in which they dwelt in comparison to the world of Middle-earth he had just seen. "What? Dobby's ancestors had their own kingdoms?" asked the feeble-minded Ron, recollecting the pathetic existence of the house elf and struggling to imagine Dobby-like creatures with their own castles and palaces. "How long was I asleep?" asked Harry, ignoring Ron. "It's still morning. You were only out for a few minutes," responded Hermione. "But it felt like my dream lasted days. That doesn't make any sense." "Well, the potion is designed to enhance your dream, not your sleep. So I expect you don't need to be asleep long for it to do its job," answered Hermione in her typical knowledgeable fashion. "Your face was twitching and spasming the whole time. We thought you were having a stroke, mate," said Ron. Sitting up, Harry rubbed his eyes, the weight of an enormous moral quandary pressing down upon him. Could Professor Gandalf, the same person who had fought alongside them, who had brought hope, who had healed Dumbledore, really harbor such dark intentions? The discrepancy between the Gandalf he knew and the one in his dream was jarring. "What did you see, Harry?" asked Hermione. Harry hesitated before responding. "Professor Gandalf. I saw him in a way that I can't really explain. He wasn't the person we know. He was something else, something dark, maybe evil. Definitely evil, actually." Harry then spent the next hour filling Ron and Hermione in on key details of what he'd seen in his dream, the chronology of Gandalf's actions, and the little golden ring. Ron frowned, scratching his head. "So he killed his friend to steal his golden ring?" "It was more complicated than that. The ring he took from that child, his friend, was no normal ring. It held great powers, enough to destroy everything. But from what I could see, he took it to save the world from another Dark Lord, but it affected him and pulled him to the dark side, corrupting him. I don't know, Harry. He's been nothing but helpful since he got here. Maybe it's just Voldemort trying to mess with your mind." "I'm not sure," Harry admitted. "It felt real, more than just a nightmare. I think I need to keep digging. Find out the truth." Hermione stood up, her brows knitted in thought. "Maybe you should. But how? There are no records which go back 10,000 years, never mind 50,000. But Harry had already considered his next steps. He pulled out the Marauder's map from under his pillow and whispered, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." The map flickered to life, revealing the intricate details of Hogwarts. He quickly scanned it for Gandalf, finding a dot labeled Professor Gandalf in his office. "I think it's best if I talk to him directly and ask him straight tonight. I'll use the last of my Felix Felicis, just to be safe," Harry said, pulling out the tiny bottle of liquid luck he had saved. "And your invisibility cloak," Hermione added, always practical. "It's best to be cautious." Ron looked uneasy. "You sure about this, mate? Confronting a wizard like Gandalf based on a dream could be dangerous." "Very perceptive of you, Ron," said Hermione sarcastically. Harry nodded, his decision firm. "It's the only way to know for sure. I can't ignore what I saw. I have to find out if he's really on our side or if he's planning some fuckery." With a plan in action, Harry decided to wait until nightfall to act. Class that week had been canceled after the Death Eater attack on the school, so the school was relatively quiet during the day, with students choosing to spend time off enjoying the sunny weather in the grounds. As dusk approached, Harry prepared himself. He retrieved his invisibility cloak from his trunk, the fabric sliding cool and silent through his fingers. He returned to his dorm briefly to down the lucky potion, feeling the immediate surge of confidence and luck wash over him. "Be careful, Harry," Hermione said as he left the dormitory. Clad in his cloak, he made his way through the quiet evening corridors of Hogwarts towards Gandalf's office. His heart pounded with excitement and confidence from the effects of the potion. He reached Professor Gandalf's door, paused, and knocked. "Fuck off, Frodo," came a roaring voice from behind the door. "Professor, it's Harry Potter. I need to speak with you. It's urgent." After a long wait, the door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit interior of Professor Gandalf's office. Harry stepped inside cautiously, his eyes adjusting to the smoky haze that filled the room. The scent of pipe smoke hung heavy in the air, wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. "Professor Gandalf?" Harry called out, his voice barely audible above the crackling of the fire in the hearth. Gandalf emerged from the shadow and smoky air. He gestured for Harry to take a seat opposite him beside the fire, his eyes reflecting the flames. "Ah, Mr. Potter," Gandalf greeted warmly. "Please, have a seat. Would you care for some long bottom leaf?" Harry hesitated for a moment before nodding, curious despite himself. Gandalf reached into a drawer of his desk and pulled out a small pouch and pipe, which he handed to Harry. With a practiced hand, Gandalf showed Harry how to fill the pipe and light it, the flame casting flickering shadows across his weathered face. As Harry took his first puff, he was surprised by the smoothness of the smoke, the taste of earth and complex flavors intriguing upon his tongue. He relaxed into his chair, the tension in his shoulders melting away. "Yes, it's good, isn't it?" said Gandalf, a mellow expression on his face. They sat in silence for a few minutes, basking in the smoke. "Now, Mr. Potter," Gandalf began, his voice low and relaxed. "What is it that troubles you? I sense there is something weighing heavily on your mind. Take another hit from your pipe and tell me the lay of your thoughts." Harry inhaled deeply, then took a few moments to gather his thoughts as he held in the smoke for a time, eventually releasing with a small cough as he began to speak. "It's about something I saw," he confessed, his words smooth, almost rhythmic. "In my dream, I mean. You were there, but you were different. Darker. I don't understand what it means." "For fuck's sake, boy, spit it out," barked the old wizard. He didn't look annoyed, but Harry sensed his failure to get to the point quickly was ruining the old wizard's vibe. "Waste of good leaf," muttered the old wizard under his breath. Harry hesitated, suddenly feeling a surge of uncertainty under the keen eyes of the ancient wizard. How could he confront a wizard as powerful and enigmatic as Gandalf based on nothing but a dream? Yet, the memory of his vision lingered in his mind, a dark shadow that refused to be ignored, and the lucky potion urged him to press on. "It was more than just a dream, Professor," Harry finally said, his voice steadied by the lucky potion guiding his every inflection. "It felt real, like a memory or a vision of the past." Gandalf's expression remained impassive. "What did you see?" Harry took a deep breath and recounted the events of his dream in vivid detail, from Gandalf's transformation into a dark and tyrannical figure to the ominous presence of the golden ring that seemed to hold sway over them all. As he spoke, Harry watched Gandalf's face closely, searching for any hint of deception or evasion. But the old wizard's features gave nothing away. When Harry finally fell quiet, they sat in silence for a long while. At last, Gandalf spoke, his voice grave and full of sadness. "I cannot deny the truth of your words, Harry. What you saw is the burden I've carried for eons. Yes, it was by my own hand, but a hand which was forced to act to save all from a far worse Dark Lord than the one you now know. So my dream was true? Harry was shocked at the frankness of Gandalf. He had expected evasiveness at being confronted. "It was, Harry, but you must hear the full tale before you judge my actions. But you killed your friend, that child, and stole his ring?" "That was no child." Gandalf's expression darkened, a shadow passing over his features like a terrible storm cloud. "The ring is a thing of great power, Harry," he said, his voice low and grave. "It holds within it the essence of darkness and corruption, a force that can consume even the strongest of wills. What I did was for the good of Middle-earth." Harry felt a chill run down his spine at Gandalf's words, a sense of foreboding settling over him. "And what about you, Professor?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Are you still the same Gandalf we know?" "I am who I have always been, Harry," he said. "My path was fraught with perils, and I cannot promise you that I did not falter at times. Now hold your tongue and do not interrupt while I tell you the full tale." Harry nodded, taking another long draw of smoke from the pipe. "Before I tell you of my story, I must first tell you the tale of the ring, of its creation, and of the Dark Lord Sauron who forged it in the fires of Mount Doom." And so, in the dimly lit confines of Gandalf's office, Harry listened as the old wizard recounted the ancient history of Middle-earth, of the war between the free peoples and the dark forces of the great enemy, and of the ring that held the power to control them all. He spoke of the One Ring, of its corrupting influence, and of the great quest to destroy it once and for all. As Gandalf spoke, waving his hands animatedly as he told his tale, Harry's imagination returned to images he'd seen in his dream, his mind transported back to that world of myth and legend. He listened intently as Gandalf spoke of the Fellowship of the Ring, of their perilous journey across Middle-earth, and of the sacrifices they had made along the way, of Boromir the Brave and the glorious riding of the Rohirrim. And then came the final moment. "Upon the slopes of Mount Doom," Gandalf continued, his voice grave, "Frodo, the Ring-bearer, stood face to face with Sauron, the Dark Lord himself, his willpower tested to the limit as he struggled to resist the ring's pull." "Fuck! Professor Gandalf can tell a fantastic tale when he has a mind to," thought Harry, as he leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest, listening as Gandalf recounted the climactic moment of the story. The fate of Middle-earth hanging in the balance. He could almost feel the heat of the fires of Mount Doom, hear the clash of swords at the Morannon before the Black Gates. "I was left with a terrible choice, Harry. Take the ring from my friend and forsake him, risking corruption through the ring, or let it return to the hand of its maker. I made the right decision, but it was still fruitless. I decided to take the chance and trust in myself, rather than submit to utter ruin. But why did you have to kill him? He was just a child." "Silence, you cunt," barked Gandalf, annoyed at being interrupted. He looked slightly mad, but regained his composure almost instantly before once again continuing. "Given its hold upon Frodo, he would not give the ring to me willingly, and time was of the essence. There was but a brief moment before the Dark Lord descended, so I had no choice but to take it by force. I took Frodo's hand with a swipe of Glamdring, recovering the ring in time and put it on. I have never felt such power in my long life. The mountain trembled beneath my feet, as did the Dark Lord before me. I put an end to him. A final end. But what happened to Frodo, Professor? If you are not silent, I shall end you too," snarled Gandalf. "He tried to take back the ring. Such was its hold upon him. So, I threw him into the fire, for no longer would he find peace in Middle-earth, seeing it upon my hand. Also, it would have been too hard to explain taking the ring in his hand, so I told everyone it had been the enemy who had killed our friend, and I had managed to save the ring from falling into his grasp." Harry sat in stunned silence. Once the dust had settled, the lords of Middle-earth urged I destroy the ring. But why? I challenged. The Dark Lord was no more. It remained, a hard-fought gift to repair the damage its maker had wrought. But They would not listen, and so I was left with no choice but to destroy them in hope of a truly new beginning by my own design. He took another long draw from his pipe, the complex smoke swirling around him before he continued. I should have known better, but the ring already had a hold on me. My will was no longer my own to command. It had already become corrupted by the ring's evil, leading me down a dark path for a very long time. I unalived many an elf, dwarf, and man who dared challenge my rule and seat upon the throne of Barad-dûr and the lordship of Middle-earth. The remaining elves fled to the west. Harry recalled the execution of the elf, dwarf, and man from his dream. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, he muttered under his breath. The dream-enhancing potion had enlightened him to the names of these valiant warriors. Gandalf's keen ears caught the names Harry had whispered, his eyes widening in shock. How do you know these names? He asked in alarm. There is not now any record remaining with their mention. I heard them in my dream, Professor. Gandalf looked visibly troubled. This is deeply troubling, my dear hobbit. Then these are not mere chance visions you are seeing. There is something else at work here. Come closer, so I may probe you. Probe me? Repeated Harry in alarm. Your mind. I must probe your mind, Gandalf clarified. Harry leaned forward, allowing Gandalf to place a hand atop his head. Suddenly, he felt a falling sensation and after a few moments, found himself standing atop an enormous tower of rock, masterfully fashioned into a dwelling. Welcome to Orthanc, once home to Saruman the White before he was expelled from the Order and his staff taken. What did you do with him? I crucified him and Grima in Isengard for their treachery. Upon this very spot, actually, Gandalf replied with a casual air. Nice, but why are we here now, Professor? Now that you are no longer bound by a Horcrux to Voldemort, he can no longer implant visions in your mind the same way he once did. I suspect it is actually Saruman who is invading your dreams, and upon probing you very deeply, I found anchor points to this place. We are within the mind of Saruman. Eventually, he will realize we are here, Gandalf explained with a smirk. Can he stop us if he knows we're here? He may attempt to trap us, as our minds are currently separate from our living bodies. Any who stumble upon us may assume we are asleep. He can trap us in here? Harry asked in alarm. Or kill us, in which case our bodies too will perish without a living mind. What the fuck? Said Harry, as fear once again gripped him. If he died in his sleep, and that useless ginger Ron would steal his firebolt and probably his invisibility cloak too. Fucking gingers, he thought anxiously. How likely is that, Professor? He asked, trying his best to mask any sign of fear. Oh, not very likely, I think. Even in his own mind, I am still more powerful than him with the ring. Thank fuck for that, whispered Harry. There is a clue here which could explain how he is penetrating your mind. We must search Orthanc. Gandalf pointed an old manky-looking finger at the solid rock under their feet, and there appeared a trapdoor descending many thousand steps to Saruman's living quarters and study. Stay close, he said, leading the way down the impossibly narrow stairs, and after an exhausting descent, which seemed never-ending, they eventually reached the residence of Saruman. As they began their search of Orthanc, Harry found himself captivated by the new world unfolding around him. Every corner of Saruman's home seemed to hold mysterious artifacts or fascinating objects. Gandalf moved with purpose, his keen eyes scanning the room for the clue they were looking for. Meanwhile, Harry trailed behind, his curiosity getting the better of him as he examined the various artifacts scattered throughout the chamber. He marveled at the intricate designs carved into the black obsidian walls, the shelves adorned with ancient tomes, and the strange contraptions that seemed to defy the laws of nature and physics. Hermione would sacrifice every house elf that ever existed to spend a day in here, thought Harry, smiling to himself. As Gandalf sifted through the ancient parchments, Harry's curiosity burned brighter than ever. He couldn't help but wonder about the fate of Middle-earth, about the remnants of the world long gone but still lingering in the shadows of history. "Does this place still exist in the world, Professor?" Harry asked eagerly. "What happened to Middle-earth? Is it all destroyed?" Gandalf paused, his gaze drifting off into the distance as if lost in memory. "Some remains. Much has perished or is now hidden, concealed by enchantment." "What remains, Professor?" Harry pressed excitedly, his eagerness growing by the second. He yearned to learn more about this world that existed beyond the pages of his dreams. "The mines of Moria, as does the kingdom of Erebor and parts of Fangorn and Mirkwood." "Where? I would love to go and see these places one day, Professor," asked Harry eagerly. "Perhaps when this is all over, I shall take you," replied Gandalf, as his gaze returned to the mess of scroll before him. "Ah, I found it," Gandalf announced suddenly, rising sharply from his seat and pulling Harry from his thoughts. "Saruman Ringmaker indeed. What is it, Professor?" "That sneaky bastard. I knew he'd try it. It was in his nature after all," scowled Gandalf. "It would appear he fashioned himself a ring of his own. A lesser ring, but it would explain much, including his ability to penetrate you, Harry. Your mind, I mean." Before Gandalf could finish his sentence, a booming voice filled the chamber, echoing off the hard rock walls. "So, you have found my secret, Gandalf, the means of my return," boomed the menacing voice of Saruman, chilling Harry to the bone. "We know of your treachery, Saruman," Gandalf declared loudly, seemingly unfazed. "Your lust for power has clouded your judgment. It is you who has lusted for power, killing your friends to gain it. You stole what was rightfully mine as head of the Order." "The ring belongs to me," bellowed Gandalf. Saruman's voice dripped with malice as he responded, though his form remained unseen. "You will pay the ultimate price, fool." As Saruman spoke, the Tower of Orthanc began to tremble, the very stones quivering with his venomous rage. "I will unleash a power greater and more deadly than that of the ring," he declared ominously. "All will be destroyed, but your punishment will be saved for last." Before Gandalf could respond, they were jolted awake from their dreamlike state by a terrified-looking Dobby who had appeared in the chamber. Startled, Gandalf raised his staff, striking Dobby across the room with a burst of magic. "For fuck's sake, Dobby!" exclaimed Gandalf, exasperated at the elves' repeated misfortune at his hands. Dobby scrambled to his feet, his movements unsteady. "Dobby is sorry, Professor Gandalf, sir," he stammered, his large eyes wide. "Dobby did not mean to startle you, but the castle is under attack." "What?" shouted Harry and Gandalf together. "Yes, under attack by trolls, goblins, dark wizards, and wolves, thousands of them." Gandalf's eyes narrowed. "We must act quickly," he said, turning to look out of the window onto the castle grounds, where they could hear the echoes of chaos and destruction. "Where is Professor Dumbledore?" Gandalf asked, his voice full of urgency. "He's on the other side of the castle." "There are too many of them, Professor Gandalf, sir. He sent me to ask for your help." Gandalf's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger flashing in his eyes. "Saruman," he muttered darkly. "Too swiftly he has moved, in fear of our discovery, but no matter," said Gandalf, slipping a hand into an inner pocket of his robe and pulling out a shiny gold ring, which he slipped onto his finger. Instantly, a surge of power filled the room, knocking Harry and Dobby off their feet and sending them crashing into the far wall. "It is time," Gandalf declared, his voice grown in power. "It is time to call upon the Nazgul."
Thanks for joining us on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey and are eager for more wild fan fiction, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your fellow fans, and subscribe for more episodes. And if you're as enchanted by the idea of Middle-earth meeting Hogwarts as we are, make sure to check out our series exploring this magical crossover. Your support brings these worlds to life. Until next time, keep the fantasy alive.